Hey, what's up everybody? Alan here, and today we're starting something new on this channel called Ask Pastor Alan, where I answer the questions that you write in, or as many of them as I can actually get to. And today we have a really good one that was written in by a young lady by the name of Candace. And so Candace asks, "Hey brother Alan, thank you for the videos. I've never really understood why Jesus got so angry in the Gospels. Why did he flip over tables and seemingly go off on people? Does this give us the right to do this too, or is there something I'm missing from this story? Please help me better understand this." Okay, so great question, Candace, and this is a question that a lot of people have wondered about as well, so I'll do my best to answer it. So during this time, whenever Jesus went into the temple and cleared out the temple and cleansed it, which we're going to read in just a moment, it was actually the time of Passover. And if you're not familiar with Passover, Passover was an event where the Jews, and even to this day, they still celebrate one time a year, and they commemorate how God miraculously freed them from Egyptian slavery in the Old Testament through Moses, when Moses parted the Red Sea and they were able to go into the Promised Land. And so essentially, not all of the Jewish people lived in Jerusalem at this time. Many of them were spread throughout all different parts of the earth. And so they would come from many different parts of the earth, and or should I say the Roman Empire at that time, and they would travel to Jerusalem to celebrate this Passover holiday. That's very, very important to help us better understand. So there were actually two groups of people that Jesus was very angry with in this story, which we're going to read in Matthew chapter 21. So let's take a look at the first group and let's see why Jesus was so angry with them. It says here, Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers. So let's stop right there. The first group of people that Jesus is very angry with is this group called the money changers. And so essentially, whenever you would travel into Jerusalem, you could only make purchases with Jerusalem currency. It would be the same way if we traveled internationally right now. If you went to a different country or something, you would more than likely have to exchange your country or your country's currency for the currency that they use in that country. And so there was a group of people that knew that these people were desperate to exchange their money. And so they inflated or hiked up the exchange rates. And they said, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of all of these people, these foreign travelers who maybe weren't familiar or they were ignorant with what the current exchange rate was at that time. And so they're going to pad their own pockets by hiking up the exchange rate. And Jesus is very angry because he's like, hey, you are taking advantage of people and you're capitalizing and you're using a holiday, a religious time, a religious season, and you're doing it in the house of God, the temple itself, and you're doing it in a greedy way to pad your own pocket. And Jesus says, this is wicked. This should not happen. But there is another group of people that Jesus is actually angry with as well. And these two groups of people are actually working in tandem together in this whole big scheme, trying to scheme people out of their money. Notice it says here, and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. So once again, during the Passover season, it was required that all of the Jews would make a certain level of sacrifices. They would use animals to sacrifice to give to God. But it was obviously not convenient to haul all of your animal sacrifices, whether it's pigeons, doves, bulls, lambs, goats, whatever the sacrifice was, if you were traveling hundreds of miles to get to Jerusalem. And so oftentimes what they would do is they would leave their animals at home and then they would purchase animals whenever they got to Jerusalem. And so then they would be able to offer the appropriate and necessary sacrifice. So now you can see how these two groups of people are actually working in tandem. The first group is hiking up the money, the exchange rate, so that people could get Jerusalem currency so that they could purchase sacrifices. And then the people were over there down the assembly line and they were saying, okay, now that you have the right money and you went through these people, Now you can purchase the doves or pigeons or whatever, and they were actually hiking the price up as well. And they knew that the people were desperate because there was no other place to get the animals other than that. It would be like if you went to a sports stadium, or if you go to the movie theaters, or if you go to an amusement park. They know that you can't purchase things any other place. And so what do? They hike up the price 3 and 4 times more than you could get at maybe a Walmart or a Target or whatever. And this is what was happening in the temple. And Jesus says, you know what? This is evil. This is wicked. You are scheming people. You're being dishonest, and you're taking advantage of people's ignorance and their desperation by basically trying to extort them out of their money. And so he overturns their tables. Now, this brings up another question now is, what should we learn from this? Should we pattern our lives off of this? Is it okay for us to get angry and do the same thing that Jesus did? Well, essentially, there are 3 different types of anger, and this is the application piece. Number 1 is rage, and this is whenever we go off on people, we curse at people, we slam doors, we hang up the phone on people, we may even hit people. Obviously, that is something that Christians should not do. So we have rage. Then the second type of anger is repressed anger. And this is whenever we just keep repressing it, suppressing it, keeping it down, don't talk to anybody. And then one day it just blows. The top comes off and we just go off on people. These are 2 ways that we should not handle our anger. But there's a third way that is called righteous anger, or righteous indignation, if you will. And this is whenever we become angry at things that we should be angry about. When we see injustice in our country, or we see other things going on in our world that should trouble us, things that break God's heart should break our heart. And so as a result, these are things that we should get angry about. And this is what Jesus was getting angry about as well. So once again, is it a sin to become angry? No. But the Bible is very clear in Ephesians chapter 4 that in our anger, we should not sin. And there's nothing in this story that demonstrates that Jesus actually sinned. So I hope that answers your question a little bit more clearly in terms of why Jesus got so angry and what that means for us. Hey, turn in your questions, send them in. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can as we continue on this little Q&A series called Ask Pastor Allen. If you found this video helpful in any way, feel free to share it with a friend. Also, if you haven't done so already, I would love it if you would subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Beat.